Taehyung sat, trembling as he hovered over the pocket where his gun was concealed, his eyes blazed with an almost uncontrollable fury. One felt her heart pound in her chest as she stood in the middle of the room. Once, Mom, where have you been? Her mother's voice was filled with worry and anger as she rushed toward her. One glanced nervously at Taehyung, whose gaze was locked onto her with a dangerous intensity. Her eyes also caught sight of Mrs. Kemp. Taehyung, control yourself, she hissed through gritting teeth, her eyes pleading with him to calm down. Across the room, Mr. Kemp's face was a mask of cold rage. Taehyung, did you hear what I said? You must get married today, no matter what. The Choi family and her search for Na-kyung are going. She will be found soon, he said in her cold voice, and Taehyung chuckled. And what if Na-kyung isn't found? His voice dropped to a menacing whisper as he fixed his gaze on Wan, sending a shiver down her spine. There are plenty of girls from respectively Mafia families. If Mr. Choi goes back on his word and you don't marry Na-kyung, you will have to marry my best friend's daughter. She is here right now. Dahi's eyes blazed with anger as she glared at him. She spat, her voice dripping with disdain. At least she is Mafia queen like Taehyung. What could we ask for? That's not necessary. The argument grew more heated and Taehyung's fur recoiled. With a roar, he kicked a small table near his feet, sending it crashing into Wan's leg and causing her to fall to the floor. Dahi, Taehyung, what is this behavior? She shouted, but only had eyes on Wan, who lay on the ground trembling. At the moment Wan's phones rang, the sudden sound cutting through the tense atmosphere, her heart pounded even faster as Taehyung's lip curled into a sinister smirk, and he began to walk towards her, each step deliberate. No way, why Na-kyung calling me? She promised she wouldn't call until this whole wedding mess was over. But why now? Taehyung is right in front of me, and the smirk on his face confusing me. Is it anger or happiness? He stood in front of her and folding his arm. Wan's heart pounded like crazy when she saw his face turn completely serious. Mr. and Mrs. Choi, also coming, and Na-kyung's brother, entered the room. Watching the scene with confusion, Wan's phone continued to ring. Taehyung, what's the matter, Wan? Who is this? He asked in a calm voice that sent chills down her spine. Wan, it's none of your business, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Taehyung seemed impressed with her bravery, but the next second her phone was snatched from her hand by her mother. Wan, Mom. Without warning, her mom answered the call and put it on speaker, Wan's eyes widened in shock. Wan, this is not right. If you had done something wrong, you need to admit it. Her voice wavered and small tears formed in her eyes. Wan, thank you so much. I'm perfectly fine now. You are my best friend. You understood me and my feelings when my parents couldn't. Wan gulped, sweat dripping from her face as everyone looked at her. Mr. Choi was about to snatch the phone from Wan's mom, but Wan grabbed it first and stood her ground, cutting the call. No, you can't do this. Everyone was shocked to hear this. Mr. Choi, already furious, pleaded a gun against Wan's forehead. Seeing this, Wan's mom rushed to her side and Taehyung's eyes widened. How dare you? He snarled, placing his against Mr. Choi. Mr. Choi removed the from Wan now, she said angrily. Tell me, where is my daughter Na-kyung? He pushed her harder against her forehead, causing two wince. Taehyung immediately loaded his, and the click echoing through the tense room. Mr. Choi gulped when his eyes landed on Taehyung's aggressive, furious face. I'm sorry, Mr. Choi, but I didn't kidnap your daughter. Taehyung's eyes flat with worry. You remove the from her, or you will regret. He commanded. Mr. Choi, terrified, quickly lowered his. Wan took a deep breath. Yes, I helped her, and I don't think I did wrong. I looked Taehyung's face. What are you saying, Wan? She shouted, her voice filled with shock and worry. She didn't want this marriage and they were forcing her. She has the right to live her life the way she wants. I said, avoiding any mention of Minsu, the boy she loved. If they find out about him, they would try to hurt him down too. Taehyung, so you admit that you did all this? He asked calmly. I nodded, looking down. Everyone's eyes were on me. Mr. Kim ran his finger through his hair in frustration. Mr. and Mrs. Choi approached Taehyung's parents and expressing their guilt over what happened. Mr. Kim, Taehyung let it go. Dad, you wanted this marriage to happen as soon as possible. Taehyung turned towards him, his voice full of bitterness. Mr. Kim sighed. Mr. Kim, yes, Taehyung, your wedding will be placed today. Otherwise, what will people think? That Mafia's bride ran away and the wedding was called off. That's why I want everyone to know what happens when someone tries to repair Taehyung. He smirked, looking directly at me. Taehyung's smirk faded as his expression turned deadly serious. And my bride will be one, he declared, his voice echoing in the room. Like a final verdict, the room fell into the stunned silence and everyone stared at Taehyung. Taehyung, are you serious? She asked, her voice trembling, but there was a hint of hope in her eyes. She had always liked Taehyung and thought he would be a good match for me. Taehyung, are you sure about this? She asked, her tone. I have made my decisions. One will marry me today, no matter what. Taehyung, you can't be serious, I whispered, my voice trembling. This isn't right. Taehyung stepped closer to me, his gaze unyielding. You have no choice, Swan. You helped Nakyung defame her family and her arrangements. Now you will take her place. Wan, listen to him. This is a good match for you, she said, her voice softening as she looked at me. Taehyung is a good man. He will take care of you. Your mother is right, Wan. This is not a bad thing. Think about it, she said, her voice gentle but firm. I felt my heart sink, but I can't. I don't want this. Taehyung's expression softened for a moment as he looked at me, but it quickly hardened again. You will marry me, Wan. If you refuse, I will make sure that your family suffers. I will destroy everything you hold dear. Wan, please, just take it. It's for the best, she pleaded. This is a bad decision for everyone. Think about your family, Wan. Taehyung is offering you a chance to protect them, she said, her voice soothing. Taehyung stood up, his face cold and unyielding. I have made my decisions. The wedding will be happen today. Everyone prepare yourself. The room was filled with a heavy silence as everyone proceeded his word. I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. The weight of history scourging my spirit, my mom continued. After what felt like an eternity, I finally looked up at Taehyung, my vision blurred by tears. Fine, I whispered, I will do it. I will marry you. Thank you, Wan. This is the right decision, she said, her voice breaking with relief. We are doing this for your own good, Wan. You will see, she assured me, her hand gently putting my back. Taehyung's expression softened for a moment, but it was quickly replaced by a look of triumph. Good. The preparation will begin immediately, he said, turning to leave the room. As he walked away, I felt my heart sink even further. I had agreed to marry Taehyung, but at what cost? My life, my freedom, my happiness, all sacrificed for Nakyung. The room was filled with a sense of despair. As Swan walked down the aisle in her new wedding dress, perfectly tailored to fit her, everyone's eyes were on her. Taehyung stood at the altar, but his gaze seemed distant. As they watched the part of the ceremony where they were to exchange vows, Taehyung's attention snapped back to the present. One stood before him, her expression cold and distant. When the time came for the kiss, Taehyung gently kissed her forehead. One hesitated for a moment. Taehyung's heart softened at the sight of her tears, but his face remained impassive. He gently wiped the tears from her cheek, his face surprisingly tender. The guests applauded as Taehyung and Wan were pronounced husband and wife. Taehyung's parents beamed with pride, while Wan's mom and Tae tried to hide their sadness behind forced smile. Throughout the receptions, Taehyung's demeanor remained cool and composed, but Wan couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her every move. As the night wore on, Wan found herself alone for a moment, gazing out the window on the city right below. Taehyung approached silently from behind, his presence startling her. You are my wife now, Taehyung said, his voice low and serious. You will obey me. Wan turned to face him, her eyes filled with defiance. I didn't choose this, Taehyung. You forced me into this. Taehyung's expression hardened. You will learn to accept it, he said firmly. You belong to me now. One clenched her face, trying to hold back her frustration and anger. She now argued with Taehyung. Flashback end. After the party, the family dinner was in the full swing, with numerous guests present. One sat beside Taehyung, who frowned upon noticing she wasn't eating properly. He leaned closer to her ear. One. He began just as she turned to look at him. Their faces were so close, and Taehyung tried to hide a small smile when he saw a bit of food near her lip. He took a tissue and handed it to her, pointing out, "Why aren't you eating?" he asked softly, surprising One with a gentle tone. "I'm not feeling well," she replied, reaching for a glass of water. Her hand felt weak and the glass slipped, slipping some water onto her lap. Everyone's eyes turned toward her. "I'm sorry," One stammered. Then quickly pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and placed it on her lap. When his hand touched hers, he realized she had a high fever. "Taehyung, if you're not feeling well, let's get you to rest," he said with concern. He nodded slightly and stood up, saying, "I'm not feeling well." Taehyung stood up as well and began to follow you. "When you didn't eat, you said as you ascended the stairs." "Taehyung, I did," he replied shortly. You nodded but suddenly felt dizzy and were about to slip when Taehyung caught you by your waist, his face shocked. "You are really unwell. I will call a doctor," he said, lifting you into his arms. You were too weak to protest. He carried you to the bedroom and placed you gently on the bed, your face flushed red with fever. He hurriedly fetched some medicine and gave it to you. "Taehyung, why don't you lie down? You need to rest," he said, his voice gentle. You nodded, too exhausted to argue. As you lay down, Taehyung pulled the cover over you and brushed a strand of your hair. Your face, his touch was surprising. "You are burning up," he muttered, more to himself than to you. He reached for his phone. "I'm calling the doctor." "Wait, Taehyung," you said, weakly grabbing his waist. "If the medicine doesn't work, then call. For now, just stay with me." He hesitated but nodded, putting his phone away. "All right, but have to promise me to tell me if you feel worse." One nodded, closing your eyes. As the fever continued to make you feel miserable, Taehyung sat on the edge of the bed, watching over you with a concerned expression. "You should change into something more comfortable," he suggested, noticing you still in a dress. The dress looked uncomfortable. He wanted to change out of the clothes, so you started to get off the bed, leaning on his shoulder for support. "Taehyung, you don't have to go inside the bathroom. You can change here." Taehyung said, his voice sounded uncharacteristically shy. You shook your head. "Good idea, but I need to change my too," he replied with a smile. He nods in understanding. You walked over to your washroom, feeling weak but determined. With Taehyung watching, you untied your bathrobe and let it fall, revealing your clothes underneath. Taehyung gulped, his eyes following your every move as he quickly dressed. Despite of the fever making you feel lightheaded, you managed to get dressed and sat back on the edge. Taehyung's concern was evident, a stark contrast to his usual cool demeanor. As you settled back into the bed, Taehyung sat beside you, his eyes scanning your face. "You are not used to listening, are you?" he remarked, his tone laced with frustration. You rolled your eyes, a fever making you more irritable than usual. "I don't need you to tell me what to do, Taehyung. I can take care of myself," he scoffed, leaning too closer. "Taehyung, really? Because from where I'm standing, you are doing a pretty terrible job at it." "Why do you care?" You snapped back, your patient think. "You only married me for your own reason. Don't pretend like you actually care." His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. "You think I don't care?" He was almost whispering, but the intensity in his voice was palpable. "You have no idea what I feel." "Then stop acting like you do," you shot back, your voice trembling with anger. "Just leave me alone." Taehyung's eyes flashed with anger, but he didn't move. Instead, he leaned in even closer, his breath hot against your cheek. "Now you want me to leave you alone?" he muttered, his voice low and dangerous. "Fine, but remember you asked for this." You couldn't take it anymore. The fever, the anger, the tension, it all boiled over. Without thinking, you grabbed Taehyung's face and pressed your lips against his, cutting off whatever he was about to say. The was fierce, driven by anger and frustration. For a moment, Taehyung was too stunned to react. Then he responded, his hand gripping a waist as he kissed back with her fiercely. It was a battle of wills, neither of you willing to go back down. Finally pulled away, your breathing heavy. Taehyung's eyes were dark, filled with mixture of anger and something else, something more vulnerable. You had even seen that before at a party. The memory made you smirk. Taehyung, how do you like it now? He asked. Taehyung, is that what you wanted? Taehyung's expression softened, and for a moment, he looked almost hurt. Taehyung, I have never wanted this, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Taehyung, I never wanted to hurt you. The vulnerability in voice caught you off guard. It was rare to see Taehyung like this, open, honest, and raw. Before you could say anything, you stood up, running a hand through his hair. Taehyung, get some rest, he said, his voice back to its usual cold tone. We will talk later. He returned to leave, but you grabbed his hand, stopping him. Wait, you said softly, stay please. Taehyung hesitated, then sat back down on the bed, his eyes never leaving yours. For the first time, there was no anger, no frustration, just a silent understanding. Taehyung, okay, he said quietly, I will stay. Taehyung watched you for a moment before he laid next to you. You were facing Celine, but you felt his presence beside you, the bed dripping slightly under his weight. He watched you intently, his eyes tracing your feature as you tried to ignore the fluttering in your stomach. Gently he placed his hand on your waist, making you instantly turn to look at him. You are my wife now, better to cuddle with me, he said, trying to make his voice sound cold, but it came out softer than he intended. You sighed, deciding to let him do what he wanted. Placing your hand over his, you could feel his warmth seeping into you. Taehyung, you have fever, he murmured, his voice tender, your eyes widening at his choice of word. What did you just say? He asked, raising an eyebrow. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. One, you better get used to do that, because you are my. You rolled your eyes, a chuckle escaping your lips. You moved closer to him, snuggling into his chest. His heart began to beat faster, a rhythm you could feel against your cheek. One, is that what you want? Because I'm your. You teased, smiling against his chest. Taehyung couldn't help but smile badly, unaware of how much his expression softened. He pulled a blanket over you both and held your waist tighter. Your heart raced when you felt his lips press against a gentle on your head. He chuckled softly, resting his chin on top of your head. You both stared like that, the warmth and the closeness providing comfort. Slowly, you began to drift off to sleep. Just as you were about to fully fall asleep, you heard Taehyung's sleepy whisper. Your heart skipped a bit at his word, a soft smile forming on your lips. You snuggled even more when you do. You murmured, barely audible, before sleep finally claimed you both. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. One stride slowly waking up to find herself nestled in Taehyung's arm. For a moment, she allowed herself to enjoy the feeling of safety and warmth, but then the reality of. Taehyung felt a movement and opened his eyes, his gaze immediately falling on you. He gently pressed a strand of hair from your face. Taehyung, how are you feeling? He asked, his voice still soft from sleep. You blinked momentarily, taken back by his tenderness. I'm feeling better, thank you, he replied. He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. Taehyung, good. You had worried last night. You bit your lips, trying to suppress a blush that returned to rise. The events of the previous night, especially your whispered confession, played in your mind. Did he hear you? Does he remember? Taehyung noticed a slight hesitation and frowned his brows. Taehyung, is something wrong? You shook your head. No, nothing. I need to get ready for the day. He watched you as you slipped out of the bed, his eyes following your every move. Something about your behavior seemed different, but he couldn't quite put a finger on it. As you headed to the bathroom, you tried to recall the events of the night before. Your confession had seemed so real, But had it been just a dream? Throughout the morning, you and Taehyung fell back into your usual routines. You tried best to avoid meeting his gaze, your cheeks still flushing whenever you thought about your words from the night before. Taehyung called out, stopping you in your tracks as you moved about the kitchen. Taehyung, we need to talk about what he was trying to sound nonchalant as you brushed yourself with prepared breakfast about last night, he said, stepping closer. Taehyung, I thought I heard you say something important, something about feelings. You felt your heart rate spike, but you kept your back to him, focusing on the task. I'm not sure about what you are talking about. You lied, hoping he wouldn't press further. Taehyung, when he said, his voice more insistent, don't do this, just talk to me. You took a deep breath, trying to keep your composure. I really need to finish making breakfast. We can talk later, okay? Taehyung said, clearly frustrated. Fine, but we will talk about this. You nodded, really flooding through you as he let the topic drop from now. You continued with your task, but you couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on you, filled with mix of confusion and something else, something deeper. As the day went on, you found various ways to avoid being alone with him, knowing that any moment of privacy would lead to the conversation you were not ready to have. You know you couldn't avoid it forever, but for now it was best you could do. Taehyung, on the other hand, was determined to get to the bottom of it. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something critical. The way you avoided his gaze, the way you blushed at the slightest mention of feelings, it all pointed to something more he just had. The dining table was buzzed with activity as everyone enjoyed the breakfast. One sat quietly, trying her best to ignore Taehyung's occasional gazes in her direction. Every time their eyes met, she felt her cheek warm and quickly. Across from her Wan's mother, Dahi and Mr. Kim noticed the subtle exchange between Taehyung and Wan. They exchanged knowing glances silently. Mr. Kim cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. Taehyung, now that you have something time off from business and no immediate missions, why don't we plan a trip to family farmhouse? He suggested, his tone warm and inviting. Dahi chimed in, her eyes twinkling with mischief. It would be a nice change of scenery. Wan loves nature place too, right? And it's been a while since we all have that together. One smile visibly lifted as the suggestion, she glanced. Taehyung observed the interaction silently, his admiration for his wife growing. He couldn't deny that seeing Wan happy brought a warmth to his heart that he rarely allowed himself to acknowledge. His gaze lingered on her, silently appreciating. After a moment, he spoke. That sounds like a good idea, he said, his voice calm, yet a hint of approval. We could all as a break. One glanced at him, surprised by his agreement, but pleased nonetheless. She managed a small smile before returning her attention to a conversation at hand, secretly grateful for the opportunity to spend time. Wan and Taehyung headed to their room to pack for the trip for farmhouse planned for that evening. As they entered, Taehyung immediately walked to the side of the room, started opening. Taehyung began, holding up expensive looking jacket. This is made for a finest cashmere. Only for the best for me, has made, glancing at you to see your reaction. You rolled your eyes, pretending to be engrossed in folding your clothes. Unaided by a lack of enthusiasm, Taehyung continued, and these shoes, custom made in Italy. You won't find anything like them in regular stores. He held up a pair of sleek black shoes, admiring them with a proud look. Impressive, you replied, your tone flat. You were determined not to engage too much, especially considering the events of previous night. Taehyung noticed your distant behavior and decided up to auntie. He picked up a gold-plated watch and put it on, flashing it dramatically in your direction. This is limited edition. Only 10 of this existed in the world. I had to pull some serious strings to get it. You couldn't help but let out a small laugh at his antics. You really love. He grinned, enjoying the fact that he had highlighted a reaction from you. Why not? It's part of charm and being sassy. He winked, his eyes sparkling with mischief. You shook your head, trying to hide your smile. You are unbelievable. Taehyung walked over to you, placing a hand on his hip. Aren't you Mrs. Kim, the luckiest woman alive to have all this Ed's approval? He gestured to himself. You chuckled, finally meeting his eyes. So really, absolutely, he said, leaning closer. But you already know that, don't you? Your heart skipped a bit, but you quickly composed yourself, turning back to your packing. Sure thing, whatever you say. He sighed, sensing you continued reluctant to address the real issue. You know we can't keep avoiding. You stiffed slightly but kept your focus on the clothes in front of you. I don't know what you are talking about. Thing's expression softened as he reached out to touch your arm. One, we need to talk about this. You pulled away gently, shaking your head. No, not now, Thing. Just focus on getting ready for the trip. He watched for a moment, a mix of frustration and concern in his eyes. Fine, but this conversation isn't over. You nodded, revealed that he was dropping off it for now. I know, but not here. Thing sighed again, but decided to respect your wish. For the time being, he turned back to the packing, still determined to have the conversation when all the time was right. As the evening approached, you and Thang loaded your bags into the car and set off the family farmhouse. The drive was going to take about 5 hours, and the sky gradually darkened as nightfall. Then glanced over at you, mischief grin on his face. You know, I have been thinking this car is pretty amazing. It's one of the lightest model, all of the bells and whistles. Only the best for us, right? You smiled faintly, looking out the window. Yeah, it's nice. Then wasn't deterred. Did you know this car can go from 0 to 16 under 3 seconds? Not that I had to do that with you in the car, of course. Safety first. He winked, hoping to get a laugh out of you. You chuckled softly, still avoiding direct eye contact. He continued with his antics, trying different approaches to get your attention. So I was thinking maybe we should name the car. How about Golden Flash or maybe Sassy Speedster? You shook your head, genuine smile breaking through. Sassy Speedster, really? He's fitting, don't you think? He said, his eyes twinkling the amusement. Plus, as the hour passed, the young efforts to keep you entertained continued. He played music, sang along dramatically to his favorite songs, and even attempted a few jokes, some of which were so bad they were actually funny. Despite a best effort, eventually the combination of soothing motion of the car and Thing's relentless humor began to make you feel drowsy. You tried to fight, but your eyelids grew heavier each passing smell. Thing noticed you struggled to stay awake and softened his tone. You should rest when well. You nodded sleepily, leaning back in your seat. Okay, but have to promise me you drive like a maniac. You smiled, closing your eyes. A moment later, you felt yourself resting on the slab. When you woke up briefly, you realized you had shifted and your head was now resting on Thing's shoulder. He was driving with one hand, his other hand arm protectively around you to keep you steady. You are okay, he murmured, noticing you stare. You nodded to tired, spawned. He settled back against him. You felt his shoulder relax slightly. The last thing you heard before falling into deep sleep was a soft humming, a lullaby of sorts, comforting and rationing. Thing glances down at you, a small smile. Thing's family had decided to take this trip without any usual entourage of security guards. It was a rare opportunity for them to enjoy the serene beauty of nature without the constant pressure of protection. This dedication was made into the understanding. In the car, the parents were driven by a long driver. The only concession is their security measure. The simplicity of the arrangement elevated the family to fully immerse themselves in the experience. Thank himself drove the car, carrying Vance, avoiding the rare moments of normalcy this trip provided. The road of the farmhouse was long. All the nearer their destination, the conversation in the car dwelt, replaced by a comfortable silence. One who had fallen asleep with her head on Thang's shoulder seemed at peace. Thang glanced at her, his expression softening the vulnerability she displayed in her sleep. The farmhouse came into view, the sprawling estate surrounded by lush greenery, the open fields. The air was filled with the sounds of nature. Thang parked the car and gently woke up when we are here, he whispered, his voice soft and started blinking sleepy as she took you surrounded. Thang smiled, pleased by her reaction. It's coming, come, let's go inside. They stepped out of the car, scratching. After a long drive, the cool night air was refreshing, filled with the scent of pine and earth. The rest of the family inside Vine found herself looking forward to the days ahead. The beauty of the farmhouse and the warmth of Thang's family made her feel welcome. As she prepared for bed, her mind wandering back to the moment in the car. With these thoughts, when drifted off to sleep, a small smile on her lips. Thang, who returned to the room shortly after, watched her for a moment before lying down beside her. He reached out gently, taking her hand in his. The next morning, the farmhouse was filled with the sound of birds chirping and the smell of fresh coffee. One woke up feeling refreshed, though slightly apprehensive about the day. Taehyung was already up, moving out the room with an air of distraction. "Good morning," you said, sensing the return of his cold demeanor. Before you could say it, there was a knock on the door. Taehyung's cousin, Kim Seok-jin, and his wife had arrived
in
for a
with a
visit.
bright smile, his wife beside him. "Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you all here." Thanks, Maud. They exchanged pleasantries, and soon the room was filled with cheerful conversation. You tried to join in, but Tang's cold behavior was starting to get under your skin. Sukjin's wife noticed the tension and tried to ease it. Why don't we take a walk in the garden? The flowers are beautiful this time of year." You nodded, grateful for the escape. As you walked through the garden, you confided in her about. After work, you returned to a farmhouse and found Taehyung in the living room, talking with Sukjin. You decided to confront him. "Taehyung, can we talk?" He glanced at you, his expression hardening. "What is it? Why are you being like this? One moment you are carrying." Seokjin and his wife exchanged worried glances, but didn't intervene. Taehyung stood up, his face set cold marks. "I don't know what you are talking about." The argument escalated with a boot of "you raise your voice." Finally, Taehyung turned on his heel and walked out of the room. Determined to break through his icy exterior, decided to take matters into your own hands. You spent the rest of the evening preparing a surprise for him. You decorated one of the rooms beautifully. "Taehyung, can you come with me? There is something I want to show you." He looked at you skeptically, but followed you inside. When he saw the surprise you had prepared, his expression softening slightly, though he tried to maintain his cool demeanor. "What's all this?" he asked, his voice quieter. Taking a deep breath, you stepped closer. "Taehyung, I know we have had our difference, and I know you have your reasons for being the way you are, but I love you, and I want us to work. I prepared this because I wanted to show you the effort and care you had put into the creating beautiful space." "When I am sorry," he said, his voice wavering. "I never meant to hurt you. It's just being vulnerable isn't easy for me." You stepped closer, taking his hand in yours. He looked down at your joined hands, then back at you. "You are right. I need to try harder. I want us to be happy together." With that, you pulled him into a tight embrace, feeling the tension melt away. "Let's start fresh," you whispered. Taehyung nodded. The night the two of you sat together, talking and reconnecting in the way you hadn't done since the wedding. The romantic atmosphere you had created helped bridge the gap between you. By the end of the evening, you felt closer. The next morning, as the sun rose with the farmhouse, you woke up feeling a sense of peace. Taehyung was still asleep beside you, his expression relaxed, his smile, knowing that this. As you got dressed and went downstairs, you found Taehyung's parents and your mom and Seokjin already up, enjoying the morning coffee. Seokjin's voice greeted you warmly. "Good morning, Van. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," you replied with a smile. "It was a good night." Just and Taehyung joined you all, looking more at ease than he had in days. He gave you a small, genuine smile, which you returned, your heart lifting. Over breakfast, the conversation flowed easily. Your parents and Seokjin noticed a change in your relationship, exchanging pleased glances. After breakfast, Seokjin suggested a walk through the farmhouse ground. "The weather is perfect and the scenery here is beautiful."